So we're back with a totally uncontroversial, nonpartisan discussion of something that no one will have a strong opinion about. Can Donald Trump still be president since he's been convicted of a crime in state court in New York? I'm kidding. Obviously, I understand everyone will have strong opinions, but my goal here today is just to give you some legal information. So a lot of people have asked me, if Donald Trump was convicted, can he be president? And the short answer is yes. There is nothing in the Constitution that disqualifies someone who's been convicted of a crime from being president of the United States, with one exception we'll talk about in just a second. The Constitution sets relatively few qualifications on the president. You have to be 35 years old, you have to have been a citizen, lived in the United States for at least 14 years, and you have to have been a natural-born citizen, whatever that means. We'll leave that for another video another time. So that's really the only qualifications to be president of the United States. Oh, and of course you have to win a majority of electoral votes in an election or be selected by the House of Representatives, or I suppose rise to the presidency through any of the other constitutional means that don't involve being elected, as we've covered in other videos. So there's nothing there, as you can hear, that says anything about not being a felon or not having committed misdemeanors or not having DUIs. There's no rules about that. We have had presidents who've had other criminal issues in the past, relatively minor. This is a relatively new idea that we might have a president who could have been a convicted felon. So he can still be president, but that does create another question, which is what happens if he's sentenced to jail? That would really be uncharted territory for our country. So if this state court judge sentences former President Trump to jail, can he serve from a jail cell? Is there any constitutional provision that says that he has to be let out? This is definitely uncharted territory, but I'm going to say that the short answer is probably yes. Going back over 100 years, there are Supreme Court precedents that say that the federal government's officers are exempt from state court intervention or state officer intervention if they are executing a federal office. So right before the turn of the century, there's a story about a guy who was arrested while going to do something in California. He was arrested by state agents out there, and the government said even if he had committed a crime in California that they had to let him go because he was working for the federal government. There could be other similar examples of that that we could see here, where a court could rule the presidency is so important in our constitutional structure that even though there's no clear provision saying this, the president has to be able to discharge the duties of his office. That does not mean that the sentence goes away. It would typically mean this sentence would be suspended during the pendency of his presidency. So President Trump could spend the next, let's say, 4 years hypothetically, knowing that as soon as he's done on January 20th of 2029, that he'll be picked up and arrested and taken off to a state prison in New York. That is at least one possibility. Of course, another possibility would be that the state court will reconsider sentencing him to prison based on the Supreme Court's decision recently as to immunity for actions taken that were related to his office. In this case, it's going to be quite a tall order for former President Trump to argue that what he was doing in making these payments or putting them on his books had to do with his federal office, but I expect that nonetheless we'll hear more about that in the coming days. Finally, there is one exception, and I mentioned it earlier, to where crime does prevent a president from serving, and that's if the president is impeached. Impeachment does bar him from holding any office of trust under the United States, including the presidency, and that would be ostensibly a permanent disability placed upon the president. So we're in exciting times, and we'll get to see all sorts of exciting new legal precedents. Hopefully this helps make something clearer. As you discuss in the comments, just be kind to one another, and happy hunting.